What's up, hardship heroes? You are back on the other side. For decades, today's guest has called the biggest moments in boxing with a voice that has become part of the history of boxing itself. From the golden era to modern prize fighting, he has witnessed greatness up close and helped us to understand it. It is my great honor to welcome to the other side Boxing Hall of Fame inductee and legendary commentator, Mr. Al Bernstein. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Nice to visit with you.
All right. I got to tell you, I really wish you could see my arm. The hair's standing up. I got the goosebumps. This is an honor not just because of who you are, but because some of my earliest memories of being a kid, 3, 4, 5 years old, is your voice, your face, and me and my dad watching fights. So thank you very
You
much
know,
for your
I,
time.
I love hearing that story because uh, I was when I go around to different places and I do a lot of appearances and I do a lot of shows
Mhm.
and music shows and appearances and other things. And when I'm talking to people and they tell me that, it makes me feel really good because when I was a young boy watching boxing with my dad, we saw Don Dunphy, the great announcer for the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. Um, and later I got to meet Don Dunphy and not only meet him, but become friends with him. And he was a mentor to me. And that bond that I had with my dad, who unfortunately passed away when I was younger, that bond of watching those boxing matches is very special. So when I hear that from somebody, it makes me feel good.
Okay, well, I'm glad. Who made you fall in love with boxing?
I liked when I was young, uh I used to like I used to get the transistor radio that we had back then. And like when there was a big fight, one of the first ones I remember was Ingemar Johansson and Floyd Patterson when they fought in the late 50s. And I used to go, when I went to bed, I had the transistor radio, hidden underneath the covers. And it was too late for me to be up, but I used to put it on and put it real low next to my ear and listen to those fights. And then watching the Friday night fights, as I mentioned, with my dad and Don Dunphy announcing it. And my hero at that time was Sugar Ray Robinson, who was toward the end of his career. He was at the end of his career, but was still an amazing fighter. And I just, I think the sport was one that captivated me because it was a one-on-one encounter. I thought the personalities of the fighters were fascinating. You could root for. They all seemed different. They were like different characters in a play,
Hmm.
and you root for them depending on what appealed to you. And that ultimately, when I was in my mid to late teens, led me to go into a boxing gym and box a little bit.
Okay. Do you remember the first time somebody punched you in the face?
Well, that was before the boxing. Yeah, I grew up on the southwest side of Chicago, so
Hmm. Hmm.
so you would occasionally be in a scrap.
Hmm.
Grew up in the Gage Park area of the southwest side of Chicago, and we, by the time you hit high school, chances are at some point you were going to be in a schoolyard
Hmm.
uh, fight. And I remember the first time somebody hit me, and I was like, "Whoa!" This is and ironically, that actually was part of the reason why I decided to go to a boxing gym because I said, "You know what? I want to be better equipped
Hmm.
to deal with this." And that and the sport aspect of boxing always fascinated me. And I always treated, even ironically, even though I'm saying that was part of the reason to go box, I really always saw it as a sport. I never saw it as a fight. I always saw it as something that I'm going to do a little better than you, I hope, in this ring. And I'm going to end up by somehow winning this. I had maybe 40 amateur fights, a lot of them on the novice level, some open. And my attitude was just this was no different than basketball or baseball or football to me. I played all the
Hmm.
sports. So But yeah, the first time was on the schoolyard, and then in a boxing match, it's different because you when you're in that situation, and especially early on when you're doing it, you're very tense, right? You know, the biggest problem with boxing is relaxing when you're in the ring. And even many great professional fighters and
Hmm.
some champions relaxed less than others, you know, like Roberto Duran was the perfect example of a fighter who at his best
Hmm.
was very relaxed in the ring, and that was part of what made him a terrific fighter.
Right.
But uh, so you had to get past that tenseness, and so when at the beginning when you get hit and you're tense and it's going to have a bigger impact on you,
Hmm.
and I'm sure for me it took me at least 10 or 11 of those matches before I started to feel. And I always liken it to horseback riding. I've ridden horses for the last 45 years of my life, or maybe a little more. And when you first start riding horses, you're tense. You're not, especially if you learn later in life. I learned in my late 20s, and you have to get to the point where you of course you learn the skill set, but
Hmm.
now you're doing it intuitively, and that's the way
Right.
boxing is. You learn how to throw all the punches and what to do in the mechanics, but then once you're in an actual match, until that moment when it becomes intuitive to you, you're probably a little more robotic.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. Um, when did you get into broadcasting, and what would you call your, I guess, big break?
Well, started to do I was in my I was in hard news. I was a newspaper man in Chicago, and I was in hard news. I was covering. I always wanted to be into sports, but
Hmm.
I couldn't get a job as a sports writer on the daily newspapers in Chicago for some reason after I got out of college. And so I became I worked for community newspapers, and I moved up the chain, and I ultimately became managing editor of this part of a chain of newspapers. And I was an investigative reporter. I won this award for being an investigative reporter, but it was all in hard news. And
Hmm.
I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do sports. So I started freelancing with writing for Ring Magazine and covering some things, and then Boxing Illustrated. And I was a stringer for the Washington Star, covering the Bears football team and stuff. So I, I, when ESPN came into fruition in 1980, I had already been writing for Ring Magazine. I'd written a book called Boxing for Beginners, which was along with a couple other people, more instructional and
Hmm.
tapping into their insights. And and I was appearing on radio shows in Chicago when there were big fights, and I was starting to edge into other kind of media work.
Hmm.
When ESPN came along, one of their stops was Chicago. Top Rank had 4 different stops that they made on the weekly boxing series that started in 1980. And one of them was Chicago. And I, back then, ESPN wasn't even on in Chicago. It wasn't even on. You had to finding it cable. A lot of people weren't
Hmm.
cable, wired for cable. But I clawed my way in with them for no money at all. I said, I'll be happy to help you. I know the fighters in this area, and I'll be happy to help you with, anything you want in terms of, research or whatever. Well, so I got with them. And one time there was a show that they had, and Tommy Hearns was sitting in as the color commentator, and I think Sam Rosen was doing the play-by-play. I can't remember. And Tommy was having a little bit of a problem, a little struggling a little bit. And I had been interviewed on the air by them a month before or whatever about my book, and for them a way to get me on. And I was there, and the producer said, "Why don't you put on the headset and sit in and for a little bit?" So I said, "Okay," and I did. And from that moment, that was the night when everything changed for me. And I can remember the first fight I did, Jamie Olatunde and Michael Bradley. were the fighters. And it felt really good. They thought I was good. And from that point on, I started getting assignments from ESPN to do the fights in Chicago. And also, back then, they were conscious of traveling, I guess. I did everything in Chicago and west of the Mississippi, and Randy Gordon was doing everything back east. And
Okay.
Sal Marciano was the play-by-play announcer working with each of us. And that was how I got on ESPN.
Wow. You less so than some other announcers that we've all seen. Everyone kind of has their own tone. Your on-air tone is so incredibly close to your right now talking tone. Do you do some guys alter their voice a little bit? Do you do any of that, or how did you find your signature tone?
No, I don't. And even when I do play-by-play, and I've done, maybe 30% or 25% of the amount of boxing matches I've done, thousands of boxing matches have been play-by-play. And ironically, now it seems like I keep doing shows where I'm doing play-by-play. When you're a play-by-play announcer, you have to slightly alter. You have to slightly alter your delivery. Doesn't mean you're changing your voice, but you're slightly altering the delivery because you're doing something slightly different. Mm-hmm. But ever so slightly for me. I'm not into. I wasn't. How can I put this? I didn't come into sports broadcasting. I came into sports broadcasting as a writer and as a conversational in interviews and being interviewed and things of that nature. I didn't come in as I'm the voice of, the St. Louis Hawks, and we're going to talk about, now it's time for our starting five. No, I mean, and most people don't even do it that way anymore. But so I didn't come in through that. And my style has always been more conversational, but conversational, but sparse. So everything I do on broadcasting, when I do it correctly, is for the most part, in a soundbite fashion, other than when we're having a conversation like this, or I'm interviewing people, or even when I interview people, especially, though, I'll keep it briefer when I'm asking questions. But so I don't alter my voice or alter my cadence necessarily. My mission is your level of excitement can change, of course, depending on what's happening, and your volume might change a little bit, but I don't see it as a stepping into character when you become when you're announcing a fight.
Okay. What separates a good commentator from a great one?
Preparation, objectivity and fairness, and paying attention. I know that last one may seem ridiculous, but it is a key, because I can, without mentioning names, I could tell you many sportscasters who suffer from just simply not paying attention well enough, not being focused on the moment, being either thinking about the thing that they discovered that they want to say, or thinking about a narrative, not what's happening in front of them.
Right.
So I think those are some of the key elements, and preparation, of course, is the key. If you go into a broadcast unprepared, that's the quickest recipe to disaster.
Yeah, no winging it. You've witnessed generations pass in the ring. What decade that you've watched would you say was the most electric?
Oh, it's not even close. It's the 1980s. Yeah, there's never been since then, and maybe before then. Now, mind you, of course, I haven't been around for all those, but in 1983 or so, I was having breakfast and I was only about 3 years into my broadcasting career, and the decade was still relatively early, but already it had produced amazing boxing, and with all these big names.
Hmm.
And I had breakfast with Gil Clancy, the great Gil Clancy, who was, of
Wow.
course, a great trainer and great announcer,
Hmm.
also somebody who mentored me and wasn't afraid to tell me things that I might not want to hear. He was he was just like he was with fighters, and he started out as a teacher in high school,
Hmm.
not in a mean way or a a denigrating way, but he was unafraid to tell the people he cared about how they could improve, and
Hmm.
I appreciated that. So we had breakfast, and I asked him. I said, this seems really special to me. Like, I've been a boxing fan, I mean, I was, what was I, 33 years old at that time. So I had been a boxing fan for a fair
Hmm.
amount of time, and had seen as a fan that I'd seen the 60s and the 70s and a year or two of the 50s. But I said to Gil, he had been around for much longer, of course. I said to him, I said, is this as special as it seems right now? And he looked at me and said, Al, it's better. He said, this is a time right now that I think we're going to all look back on and say it was the best of times. And it was. The 1980s was that decade, and bleeding into the 90s a little bit was the number of great fighters, the number of great fights, the drama, the excellence,
Hmm.
uh, unmatched, unmatched. And it was available. Boxing was on over-the-air TV in the United
Yep.
States and in other countries as well. The sport, and by that time, we hadn't yet got to the point where so many sports were pulling at us for attention, right?
Hmm.
There was still only, so many sports that we would see on a regular basis. So to me, the 80s was by far the best decade for boxing.
Okay, I would agree with you. Uh, I'm sure when I wrote this question, I had one in mind, but I'm sure you've experienced more than I can count. Share a time that you felt history happening inside the ring.
Mm. Well, I felt it when I'll speak to moments that I was involved in as opposed to ones I just witnessed, although there were many that you witnessed that were,
Hmm.
you knew something special was happening. I certainly felt it at the Hagler Hearns fight when I announced that in 1985. You could
Greatest round in
feel,
boxing.
yeah, one of the greatest rounds ever, certainly, and probably the best middleweight round for sure. And you you could feel that was part of the Four Kings, and I participated in
Hmm.
a fair amount of the Four Kings fights. Um, that was a moment where you just knew uh, you were witnessing something that was going to last the test of
Hmm.
time. Last the test of time. Um, I mean, as a and then probably the now there was one that I did that is didn't it has stood the test of time, even though it wasn't on that level of fight in terms of in the cosmos, and that was uh, Diego Corrales and Jose Luis Castillo, who in 2004, I think it was, fought for the lightweight titles. And Mandalay Bay wasn't even totally full for that fight, amazingly. Everyone knew it was going to be a great fight.
Hmm.
But they produced the best fight I've ever announced, the most exciting and well fought fight I've ever announced. And it is widely regarded as maybe the best lightweight championship match that's ever happened. I felt that was, even though it didn't have the trappings of it, I
Hmm.
felt like we were witnessing and being a part of something historic that would live well after. And sure enough, there are very few boxing fans that are actual
Hmm.
boxing fans that don't know about that fight and don't, Um, and then the other moments that if they didn't reach historic levels in terms of the excitement of the moment, but were big in the sport of boxing, um, one would have been Pacquiao Mayweather because it
Hmm.
was such a big event, and I was involved in that, calling that fight. And that was, ironically, a collaboration between HBO and Showtime to do that pay-per-view, which was fascinating. He wrote a book just about that.
Right.
But, and that was like another moment that I thought was, was special. And so I've been involved, and I've been another one was Ricky Hatton and Costa Zoo in England, where Ricky Hatton won the title against Costa Zoo, and that was over there especially a major moment in boxing, and one that is almost unrivaled in my mind for excitement of the event. I don't think I've ever been in an arena where the crowd literally seemed to will someone to victory. I'm not a believer in those kinds of dynamics necessarily, even though obviously, athletes do feed off the energy. But this was one of those cases where I said to the British stage manager, I said, I've never been in an atmosphere like this in my life. And that was well into my career. It wasn't like I'd started yesterday. And so that was pretty extraordinary. So those are a few of the moments. One other moment, though, and I've been revisiting it lately for some reason, that to me felt very dramatic, though it might not be in the wide range of history. The major moment was I called a fight along with Dave Bontempo where Johnny Tapia won his first world title in Albuquerque in the pit with a packed house. And as you recall, and as many people, and of course you understand this because your show is about this. It's about people redeeming themselves and about, finding their way in life. Johnny Tapia had for 3 years at least before then had been as low as a human being could be. He almost died. He was on the streets. He was, and somehow made his way back with the help of family and his own inner resolve. And ironically, he was a better fighter after he came back to the sport than he was when he left it. And this was the night in which he won a world championship. And it's probably my proudest moment as a broadcaster. And the reason it's my proudest moment as a broadcaster was not for what I said, but for what I didn't say. When Johnny Tapia knocked out, I was doing play-by-play, Dave Bontempo was doing color. And when he knocked out or stopped Henry Martinez, the crowd's going crazy. And all I said was, Johnny Tapia is all the way back. And then Dave Bontempo and I remained silent for the next minute and a half or 2 minutes. We didn't say a word. And that was, the crowd took it from there, and the shots and the crowd carried the moment. And it was one of the more dramatic moments I've ever been involved in.
Would you say that's your favorite comeback story in boxing?
It's right up there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got to be very high on the list. I mean, it's staggering that he was able to come back to the sport and be so good and carve out, the second part of his boxing history.
Absolutely. Would you say greatness is born, built, or forged through adversity?
I think it's forged. I think people that can forge it probably have something internally within them that makes it possible. You can't. The one lesson I think I've learned in life is, and this is true you can't make somebody want to do something. It's very hard to do that if they don't have the desire. And how many times in life, whether it's couples or friends or in professional relationships of any kind, do we believe we can make somebody really want a certain thing and have the drive to do it if they don't? It's a recipe for failure. It just is. Not everybody, can do that, or they may have different passions. So I think that inside every one of these champions or whoever that became great, there was something inside them, an internal thing that allowed them to go after it. But it's definitely forged because I just saw Ted Williams uh, give his what's the clip of Ted Williams giving his speech at the Hall of Fame when he was inducted, and he said, "Hitters are not born." He said, widely considered one of the top best hitters in baseball ever. He said, "Hitters are not born; they're made." And
Yeah.
I think that's true of champions also. They're made. They're made. They start out with something internal that they can call on, but then at the end of the day, it's like anything else in life. We're only as good as how we approach our craft, how much work we put into it, how much help we get along the way. That's also a key element, So no, I think they're forged.
Okay. Um, as you mentioned earlier, there's a point to this show other than talking about fights and stuff. And to share a little background with the viewers, the first time I spoke to you on the phone, you answered, and I introduced myself with my voice shaking because I'm a huge fan. And you let me know that if I had a hard time understanding you, it was because something had just happened extremely recently. And as long as it's still okay, I wanted to see if you could share with us what's been going on in your life, how you're doing, and where your redemption in this lies.
Yeah, we all go through. Everybody has their challenges in life, and for me, the recurring challenge has been family members who get cancer. That's my recurring. My father died when I was 11. My mother died when I was 30 of cancer. My brother-in-law, my sister's husband, who's a wonderful man, died when he was 33 or 34 of cancer and left my niece and nephew young children. And then in 2003, my wife, who was then only, I don't know, 40 years old or so, 41, got stage 4 breast cancer.
Mm.
And it was, it spread all over her body, breast cancer. And, the prognosis was not great, but she responded to treatment very well. And then there's this drug called Herceptin that for about 40% of women that have a certain kind of blood, HER2 positive, you can use this drug, Herceptin, and it can help you greatly. It's almost like a miracle drug in some ways. And that drug, she was on it for, oh boy, let me think. Maybe from 2003 to about 2023. She was on it for maybe 18, 19 years. Every 3 weeks of her life, she had to get go get an IV. And while it didn't prevent, the only place it doesn't protect you is your brain. And it came back for 4 years in her brain, but she got an operation, she got radiation, she got through that. And then the Herceptin kept her alive all the way through till, and it was, I don't need it to say it, but to emphasize this point enough, but it was quite a difficult journey all the way through. So in November of this past year, she passed away. And, it was after a long and very, very difficult and tough journey.
Yes, sir.
So that, if I had to, you were asking me when we were on the phone about, a thing that kind of came close to breaking you or and probably what I would, the two things in my life I would say are her getting diagnosed and the genesis of the toughness of her journey, and then of course losing her. So not an easy thing.
Wow, I'm so honored that you shared that. I wish I was there, Al. I'd give you the biggest damn hug, man. I love you, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Is
and
there
that story is, and by the way, I'll add a postscript to that. uh, we just had a celebration of life for her. And my life lived two different lives. One, first as an entertainer. Her and her sister were performers for over 35 years, and they performed all over the United States and elsewhere, and they were great. And they were recording artists. They were just excellent. And when we had so that was the first part of her life, and then she retired shortly after a little bit after we got married, when we had our son. But the last part of her life, she became a humanitarian. When she got diagnosed, her oncologist, Dr. Allison, here in Las Vegas, Connie was going to open up a beauty salon for women who had lost their hair and who were struggling with all that stuff. But her oncologist said, instead of that, I've always wanted to have a facility that provided, because my wife is using a lot of other things like Reiki and wellness things, and all in addition to the medical treatment and dietary things. She was incorporating that all in. And her oncologist said, I've always wanted to have a facility that would help people free of charge with all the ancillary things beyond the medical. And my wife, while she was battling stage 4 breast cancer, founded the Caring Place here in Las, co-founded the Caring Place with the help of me and a board that we put together, co-founded the Caring Place, which is a facility here in Las Vegas that is still ongoing. It's now under the auspices of the Nevada Childhood Cancer Organization, that is free of charge, helping thousands and thousands of people. So that's kind of the corollary to it, right? You know, that out of this tragedy.
Absolutely.
That.
There you go. Man, oh, you got me, Al. I love it, man.
It's what it is.
Yes, sir. I'm sure you've got 1,000 other people that have told you this, and I'm the last person on your list, but I do want to say it. If you ever don't have a single person in the world to talk to and need somebody to chat with, I'm always available.
I appreciate that. That's very kind of you.
In decades from now, when people talk about Al Bernstein, what do you think they'll say about you?
Well, I don't know if they'll be talking about me decades from now, but
no doubt they will, Al. No doubt they will.
I think I want them to say, I want them to say I was fair to everyone I covered, more than anything. I mean, I wrote in my book, I wrote a book in 2012 called 30 Years, 30 Undeniable Truths about boxing, sports, and TV. And I devoted a whole chapter to being fair to whoever I was covering. I'll briefly tell you where the story I put in the book. I was sitting and watching baseball with my father. And again, he passed away early, so these moments with him were special. But we're watching, I'm a Cubs fan. I grew up in Chicago. And we're watching the Cubs against the Cincinnati Reds. I'm like 10 years old. And the Cubs didn't do so well during that period. They've seldom had great games. So here they were doing really well against the Cincinnati Reds. And they brought in some reliever, and the Cubs were lighting them up. And the manager came out to take him out, and I was feeling giddy in the moment. And I said to the guy, like almost taunting him, I said, yeah, go back to the minors. You know, Cubs are killing you. The TV went off. I looked around. I went to the TV was off when I came back, when they were bringing in the picture. And I said to my dad, what happened? He said, I turned the TV off. I said, why? He said, you don't need to be sitting here saying that about that pitcher. He said, that's not how we watch sports. He said, and if you keep doing that again, the next time you do it, I'm going to turn the TV off. And if you keep doing it, we're not going to watch sports together. And my dad was the most gentle human being on the planet. Hardly an authoritarian, seldom disciplined me. But this struck a chord with him because he did not want me being unkind to them. He said,
Hmm.
just because the Cubs are doing well, you don't have to denigrate that person. Well,
Yeah.
let me tell you something. That was the most profound lesson anyone ever taught me about sportscasting.
Okay.
It was way before I was ever going to be a sportscaster. And I always thought about that because I always thought about my words when I'm covering a sporting event, they have an
Mhm.
impact,
Absolutely.
And so what I want people to hopefully say about me, as much as anything else, is that I was fair. Of course, I've made mistakes in 45 years. It'd be impossible not to.
Right.
Uh, I've made errors about maybe saying enough something's not factual. Maybe sometimes I've strayed from my code that I give myself for announcing, but it was never intentional. And the one thing I don't think I've ever done, ever in 45 years of broadcasting, is make any comment about what an athlete's doing a personal comment or denigrate them as a human being. I've never done that one time. And I can't imagine anybody could find a spot where I did. So I'm hoping that more than anything is the legacy that I leave behind.
Okay. Okay. I like that. This may be a difficult question because you're going to have way too many names going through your head. I want to know who you put on your personal Mount Rushmore of greatest boxers ever. Who are your top four?
Hmm. I'm not a big list maker.
Okay.
I rebel against lists.
Okay.
So I'll give you just some names,
There we
uh,
go.
that in general that are great. I mean, I do believe that probably the greatest boxer of all time, although again it's hard to say, is Sugar Ray Robinson, who could do everything. And
Hmm.
I mean, he in it as a welterweight, he was 131-1. Think about that for a second. I mean,
Man.
and he fought against, and during that period, I think I looked it up once. He fought like 7 or 8 or 9 guys that would ultimately be in the Boxing Hall of Fame during that period. Plus a lot of great contenders. And the only one he lost was a fight with Jake LaMotta, in which LaMotta, kind of the way it worked out, LaMotta almost came in as a middleweight. And then, of course, after that, he beat LaMotta 5 straight times.
Hmm.
So that's amazing. And then into his 30s, even in his later years as a middleweight, in a weight that he, wasn't totally his natural weight, he was great, and he could do everything. So he's certainly
Okay.
up there. Um, uh, Marvin Hagler is a boxer that I covered a lot. I admired him as a boxer. I think he's one of the great middleweights of all time, one of the top 2 or 3
Hmm.
for sure. I mean, you can, Ray Robinson was a great middleweight too, of course. Sugar Ray Leonard is another fighter that I, put way
Hmm.
high in the list. Obviously Ali, because of all that he accomplished, and uh, was pretty extraordinary. And I'm gonna throw Tommy Hearns in there as well because
Hmm.
he was a great fighter. Maybe he was arguably a couple of rounds away from being undefeated his whole career.
Yeah.
And here and there. I mean, if he's fighting Marvin Hagler and the cut gets bad, he wins the Hagler fight. Even though
Yeah.
Hagler, of course, knocked him out. Um, and uh, and for consummate boxers, Pernell Whitaker was a great boxer. Floyd Mayweather was a great defensive fighter. Really good. Manny Pacquiao
Hmm.
during that his prime period of when he was fighting had really 2 different Hall of Fame careers, because when he was fighting in the early 2000s against Eric Morales, Juan
Hmm.
Manuel Marquez, and Marco Antonio Barrero, those 4 men, they were to me the 4 kings, the smaller 4 kings.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure that the actual number of great fights they created were more than what the 4 kings created. The 4 kings created a lot of good fights, a lot of good
Hmm.
fights. That group created even more.
Yeah.
And I don't think of myself as a boxing historian, even though I know about the history. I'm not sure you can find 4 fighters that were in a period that had better fights against each other. And that's with Juan Manuel Marquez kind of being frozen out for a long time. He wasn't getting the fights with those other three on a regular basis, but then he did start to get them at the end. But so, Pacquiao is another one that I throw on there. I had the pleasure of knowing Archie Moore during the latter part of his life. And of course, he was one of the, most amazing man. He won the light heavyweight championship at age 40 and kept it for 8 years. It's ridiculous, right? And of course, he didn't get a world title shot, allegedly because of, the color line in boxing, even though boxing is one of those sports where different minorities have gotten better chances than they did in other sports. Still, there was a period where fighters like him, Charlie Burley, a bunch of other people didn't get opportunities for titles. So he was pretty amazing. So those are some of the people. I could go on and name, 20 others, but those are just some names that pop into my mind when I think of, fighters that were so remarkable and their careers were so remarkable. There's so many more.
Okay. Are we okay on time or to the last section of questions?
No, good.
Okay. Good. This final segment is called Make a Choice, Champ. And it is presented by show sponsor HKA USA. Okay. And the idea here is to make the Hall of Fame announcer, broadcaster, commentator, play-by-play, all of that more relatable to the regular guy sitting in his apartment in Arkansas in between grocery store shifts. Are you ready?
I'm set. Fire away.
All right. What's the best Rocky movie?
Probably Rocky 1, I think, because it was so fresh and so new. I was in Rocky 5, which I know is not highly regarded in the Rocky pantheon, but
saw it twice in theater.
Pardon?
Saw it twice in the theater.
Yeah, and I was supposed to be in Rocky 2, but ESPN wouldn't let me because they had USA Mike flags on it. So I would say the first Rocky is my favorite. Okay.
What's your favorite animal at the zoo?
Ooh, animal in the zoo would be, I think maybe, let me think for a second here. I love giraffes because they're so interesting, and I love seeing them. I'm going to pick giraffes.
Okay. All right. Who wins both in their prime, Tyson or Ali?
Ali.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
All right. These next couple questions
would be a problem for Tyson.
Absolutely, I think he frustrates Tyson.
Yeah, I think that and his chin, because he would be hard to, to knock out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Joe Louis versus Rocky Marciano.
In their prime, probably Joe Louis. They fought after Louis was older. But that's a great fight no matter when, because they were both size-wise similar. In those days, heavyweights were between 190 and 200 or so. So that, like, if you ask me, would Rocky Marciano beat Lennox Lewis? No, he wouldn't. Would he beat, some of the other giant heavyweights? I say probably not, because the size difference would be big. But Joe Louis and him were similar in size. Now, Joe Louis was certainly a more skilled boxer puncher than Rocky Marciano, but we know that the thing that made Rocky Marciano so great was his will and his power. I do think Louis would have won the fight, but I think at any point in their career, it certainly is a competitive fight.
Okay. Your bathroom at home, does the toilet paper feed over or under the roll?
What was that?
In your bathroom at home, does the toilet paper feed over the roll or under?
I didn't catch that. What is it?
Does the toilet paper feed over the roll or under in your bathroom at home?
I think it goes over.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I think over.
Everybody has a preference.
Yeah, I think it's over. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's
over. All right. What's your favorite arena to call a fight in?
I like let me think for a second. Well, here's a funny thing. I don't like outdoor fights, and yet I'm going to pick an outdoor arena. I don't like outdoor fights because the weather gets in the way, and it's like Woody Hayes said about the forward pass. 2 out of the 3 things that can happen are bad, so I don't want to do it,
Mhm.
right? So I think mostly outdoors is not great, but it's been called many things. The StubHub Arena, and the outdoor arena in LA
Mhm.
that's like a bowl. It's had a number of different names. You know the one I'm talking
Mhm.
about. It's right next to a soccer stadium.
Yep.
I I have done that place when the weather's beautiful, which it often is, and that place is filled. I will tell you, it is a great, and it had this reputation of producing great fights, right? It was like called the war zone or
Mhm.
whatever. I mean, we would go there. Every fight that went in there for some reason for 5 years was great. And so that is a place. The other place I love is the Manchester Arena. I've done a number of fights there, not just the Ricky Hatton one
Mhm.
in Manchester, England. It's had a bunch of different names as well. That one is high on my list too.
Okay. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No, not for me, but it may
Very
for
good.
others,
Thank
but it
you.
doesn't belong on it for me.
It never belongs near
Yeah, I'm
pizza.
not.
No.
I'm not. And yeah, I'm from Chicago, so we take our pizza seriously.
There you go. Expert spoken. Uh, you have to sing one song, and let me preface this: no happy birthday, no nursery rhymes, no Christmas carols. You have to sing one song, start to finish, without making a single mistake for $1 million. What song are you picking to sing?
Oh well, that would be easy. The one that as you know, I do music shows out here in Las Vegas and perform. And the one song that I've sung at every single music show I think that I've ever done in the last. I mean, first music show I did was before the Hagler Leonard fight back in '87 or whatever at Caesar's Palace. This song has probably been in every show I've ever done that I've done. It's a pure music show since, and that is Georgia on My Mind, written by the great Hoagie Carmichael, made super famous by Ray Charles, and
Mhm.
covered by everyone. Uh, I would pick that song because while I'm not, you know, I don't claim to be the greatest vocalist that ever lived, but I take it very seriously and I do it professionally and I do it right. There is one song I don't believe I have ever messed up, and that's Georgia.
There we go.
I've never
That's a
forgotten the
great
lyric.
choice.
I've never done it badly. And so if they put a gun to my head and you said that's you got to pick one song that your life depends on, that'd be the one I'd pick.
There we go. I love that. Back to boxing for a second. Again, both in their prime. Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. versus Pernell Whitaker.
Pernell Whitaker. I mean, they fought almost when they were in their prime. I thought they were in their prime
Mhm.
both, and Whitaker won. I mean, it
Okay.
turned out to be a draw, but I don't think I would venture to say that 8 out of 10 boxing fans would say Whitaker won the fight.
Okay. All right. Triple G versus Andre Ward.
That's a very interesting fight. I would go with Andre Ward because he's a naturally bigger fighter. So let's say they met at 160, or let's say, well, Golovkin would have to move up to 168, or they'd meet at a catch weight. But Ward is a true 168 pounder and even fought at 175 and won titles there. So I think the size of Ward and his adaptability, which was astonishing. He was one of those fighters that just knew how to win. I'd have to lean toward Ward. It would be a great fight. And of course, Triple G was a great fighter. Now, the more interesting one, even, if you don't mind me straying, is Calzaghe and Andre Ward. That one has been debated many, many times. And I know a lot of people denigrate Joe Calzaghe, but if you ask me, if you asked me for a fight, an all-time fight, a mythical matchup, that would be my top 5 to pick. That I would be
Okay.
fascinated to see Joe Calzaghe and Andre Ward. I don't know who would win.
Okay. That would be a good one. Um, you're going to go commit a bank robbery, Al, and you have to take 2 people with you, a gunman and a getaway driver. Who are you taking?
I'm going to rob a bank and I have to take two people with me
Yes, sir.
that I would trust implicitly, right?
Yes, sir.
And that would be cool under fire.
And quiet after.
And be, pardon?
And be very quiet after.
And be quiet after. Okay, one is Joe Goosen.
Okay.
He's coming with me. Because he would handle himself in pressure, would be loyal to the end, and would probably find a way to do the bank robbery with nobody getting hurt. And let's see, who'd be the second one I would bring with? Wow, that's a tough one because you got to think of somebody that has certain skill sets that you would want. I would bring who would I bring with me to be the second person? Here's a one that might be. I would bring Antonio Tarver with me. Yeah,
Wow.
Antonio's one of those guys, solid guy that I think would be like a go along with the plan. You know, whatever it is, he'd be with you and you know, has the mental toughness to do it and everything. So those would be the two I'd pick. I picked two boxing people.
I love that. What inspires you, Al?
What inspires me? I'm inspired by excellence. I love things that are eclectic. I'm inspired by people and things that have many interests. It's both. I say it's both my strength and weakness that I am interested in so many things. It has, and everybody that is eclectic, I think, if they're honest about it, probably. Well, no, I don't know if they all think this, but I know a lot of them do. Will say that they love the fact that they're interested in so many things and that they can go off in different directions. But they also feel like somewhere along the line they suffered from that because in our world, especially our world now, maybe, and even in the past, when you concentrate on one or two things exclusively and you make that your mantra, you do better in some arenas. You may do better financially. You may do better in terms of your overall career. You may do better in whatever. But I know many people in music. I know my wife's a perfect example. They were very eclectic in what they did. And while they had a wonderful career, it may have hampered them in terms of, you know, getting big in one genre as opposed to the other. And I know many people in music that they have to wait until they become famous to be eclectic in the music they choose. And then they can. But if they don't zero in, they might not get big enough to, and then they have to, you know, live with the consequences. But I appreciate people that are eclectic, things that are fascinating and interesting. That inspires me. And excellence. When I see somebody doing something really well, I don't care what it is. I mean, I don't care what it is, whether it's somebody who's a waiter, somebody who is you know, a musician, somebody who's a sportscaster, somebody who's a dock worker. I don't care who they are. If you could look at them and you say, man, that person is doing what they do and doing it really, really well, that is a constant inspiration to me. We had you know, we talked about my wife's situation. We had a woman who for 4 years was a caretaker with her, who did that job better than I could ever imagine somebody doing. And she inspired me, you know, because of the excellence with which, you know, she did it. I mean, the Olympics are on now. And I know him tangentially. Terry Gannon, who does the figure skating for, along with Tara Lipinski and Johnny Weir, I am constantly always in contact with him and telling him that he does that as well as anybody could do it. And the three of them do it as well as anyone could do it. So even though it's a sport that I'm certainly not an expert in, though interested observer, and like everybody, right after the 4 weeks of the Olympics, you think you're an expert. But I look at him and I look at those two people with him, Tara and Johnny, and I say, that's excellence. I'm inspired by it. It makes me want to go announce. It makes me want to get back on the air at any given time and channel that inner excellence into whatever it is I'm doing.
I love that, man. That's awesome. What's the best way for fans and friends to keep up with you these days?
Well, I'm on X. I'm at Al Bernstein. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok. I try and do videos on there when I can, and so they can interact with me and reach me those ways. They can see me on. I do the Big Time Boxing USA series on DAZN. So we have our next show on March 19th, I believe, from Puerto Rico.
Okay.
Just did a show for them. I'm going to have a couple things to announce, but I can't announce it yet. I just kind of semi-finalized something yesterday that is good where fans will be able to see me, but I can't talk about it yet. But those are some of the places. I do the Country Box series, which every once a month that's on there. It's on YouTube from Nashville. And a number of other, they can catch me. Also, I have my own show on the Salida Promotions YouTube channel called Big Time Boxing, where we interview well-known people. So if people want to go and see that, they can see me interviewing a number of people in the world of boxing and on the periphery of it.
All right. What is your best message of hope for anyone who's going to watch this that's going through a rough time?
I think life deals all of us, I don't care who we are or what our resources are or what our station in life is or whatever. It doesn't matter. Sometimes those things add on depending on where you're at in the pecking order. They can add difficulties, but every human is going to face some difficulties, and for me, the message of hope, I think, is simply that we never know how we can find resolve inside ourselves to deal with things, and sometimes we think we're not going to, and I think more often than not, people surprise themselves with the ability to find that inner resolve. And that's the thing I would say to people. Just look really hard inside yourself, and you may find these reserves that you didn't think you have. And even when circumstances, maybe not of your doing, are stacking up against you, that's the place where you're going to find some of the answers, right? Something that can help you in that moment. I just think it's important to look inward and find that resolve that you can get. And then, of course, the other part of that is don't be afraid to seek help from other people. Sometimes we are all prisoner to that, where we don't. I mean, obviously you have to choose wisely where you seek that help, but don't be too proud, in my opinion. And I think to me, that's where hope comes from. It comes from your inner resolve, and it comes from people that will help and make your life, hopefully, help give you that inner resolve.
Absolutely. That is great. Al, I don't have any more questions. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Maybe somebody you'd like to shout out?
No, I mentioned all the places where people can see me and find me, and it's been fun to do it, and I enjoyed the interview, and you didn't have to feel nervous about it at all. It's a great interview, and we covered a lot of big territory here.
Good deal. I appreciate your comments. I will get this uploaded the next day or two. I'll send you the first copy. If you want to check it out and you don't like it for any reason, let me know. I'll take it down.
It's your show. I'm sure it's fine. It'll be, as long as you like it, I'm fine with it.
All right, Al. Again, thank you. This is a bucket list interview for me. Shout out Kevin Ioli for introducing me to you.
Kevin, one of the great boxing writers of all time, who is going into
Absolutely.
the Boxing Hall of Fame and who deserves that immensely. Yeah, he's the one that hooked us up, and he is a great, great guy. Kevin is somebody I admire and respect. And Kevin and I once did when I had my radio show on the ESPN affiliate here in which was an all sports show and everything. Kevin is a big Pittsburgh, as you know, is a big Pittsburgh sports fan. And we had he's the guest on my show a lot. And we had a challenge, a quiz challenge, where he came on the show and I got to ask him questions about Pittsburgh sports teams. And he got to ask me questions about TV Westerns. And we said you had to make them reasonable questions, though hard. And we both, I believe, fulfilled that perfectly. And we went right down to the wire, and he won on the last question. So he can hold that over my head forever. He's never been mean about it, but he was the winner in that competition by one question. I can't remember what it was. I couldn't answer, but I got more response on my radio show to that segment than I swear anything else I ever did. No matter how many famous people I interviewed or whatever, they all say, "Oh, I remember that thing you did with Kevin." Kevin's a great guy.
He's the best. Al, have a great rest of your day, man. Thank you so much.
You too, my friend. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.